Was it motivating to you at all that ESPN ranked you the 40th best player in the league?
Nah, not really. I've known for a long time they're a bunch of idiots.
But you're also been known to use outside motivation to your advantage. Is that a case here?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to use things of motivation that are tend to be in the realm of reality. So.
What's good, everybody? The Ball Don't Lie boys are back, even though the NBA season is done for the first time in about a year. It's been a long season, to say the least. Don't worry, though. We're still getting creative here. We're still coming out with content. Actually, a lot went down, actually, over the last couple days or week or so in the NBA. So we're going to get right to it, Matt. Let's start off with Daryl Morey, who stepped down, Rockets GM. He was there for 13 years. Really long time, obviously. The Rockets went to, I believe, 8 straight playoff appearances over the last 8 years. No other team has been to it 8 in a row. So let's give the man credit where it's due. But I just want to know, what was your initial reaction to hearing the news?
Well, I was a little bit shocked, but honestly, he wasn't getting a lot of good reception in Houston. Obviously, with the way he constructed that roster, with trading for Westbrook, that didn't work out the way that everybody hoped it would. And obviously, with the no center thing, obviously not looking as good as it did when they first ran that offense. But with D'Antoni not coming back as well, there's just a lot of need to change in Houston. Yeah,
it looks like they may be entering a bit of a rebuilding phase here. Not really sure who's going to take over that GM spot. It's still up for grabs, if you will. They still need a coach, too. So I'm very curious to see kind of how they go about this. And, the Rockets have been really good. Like I said, they made the playoffs 8 straight times. They went to the conference finals a couple of times, too. But they never ended up winning the big one. Never went to the finals, obviously never winning a championship. So would you say that Daryl Morey, despite being able, they got James Harden for basically nothing. He made some good draft picks, found guys like PJ Tucker. Would you say that his run with Houston was a success or a failure?
I'd say it was a success just because of, finding that diamond in the rough with James Harden, bringing that franchise back into relevancy, because I don't know where they would be if they didn't have Harden for the past 8 years. But I think, once they got competitive, I think that part you could call a failure because he didn't do a lot to help Harden out. I mean, he tried with Chris Paul. That didn't work. He tried with Westbrook now. That's obviously not working. So, I mean, if you break it up into 2 parts, I'd say the beginning was a success, and then towards the latter stages there was a failure.
Yeah, I mean, Daryl Morey, obviously a very extreme GM. I mean, he basically changed basketball in a sense with the whole analytics and stuff. I mean, he was really the one that adopted that. Obviously, they went all in this year with no big man whatsoever on that roster. Literally went all small guys, multi-positional players on the wing. And it obviously didn't work out. You can argue maybe they just had some bad luck. I think, like, playing the Lakers, I think the Lakers were just a better team. They had to run the Golden State quite a bit of times as well, which, is obviously probably the closest thing we've seen to a modern-day dynasty in quite some time in the NBA. But I think that, Daryl Morey overall did a pretty good job. He made some really good moves, made some not-so-great moves too. But, I mean, in 13 years, that's pretty much how it's going to be.
Yeah, 13 years is a long time to be there as a GM, too, and he didn't get fired, so that's good.
He did not get fired. He actually stepped down. The Rockets owner, I always forget how to say his name. It's Tillman Fertitta. That's how you say it. But he was actually kind of shocked. He said that he wasn't expecting Daryl Morey to leave. He had no intentions of firing him either. I'm sure they were going to make some significant moves on that roster. Obviously, D'Antoni walked, but Daryl Morey was still in their long-term plan, so I was surprised he walked away. He said that he wants to spend more time with his family. I believe his children are, older, around our age. I think they, just graduated high school and are taking, a leap year or something. I read into this. It wasn't like I knew this off the top of my head. But so I thought that was pretty interesting. Apparently, the Rockets are expected to keep Harden and Westbrook together. I'm not sure how true or not that is. I think that's probably true. But I just want to ask you, Matt, let's say the Rockets blow this thing up. Is there anybody that's just untradeable? You're like, I don't care what the deal is, I'm not trading this guy.
Well, I wouldn't trade Harden because he is one of the best scorers of this generation. I know he hasn't been the most lights out in recent postseason memory, but he is far from this team's problem. The problem is the fact they don't have anybody on their team over 6'6", and that they are paying Westbrook $40 million a year to throw the ball into the stands. That's the problem.
Yeah, so you think Harden's the only untouchable? I'm not trading this guy no matter what the circumstances.
I mean, if the Lakers are giving up LeBron, maybe, but other than that, it'd take a lot for me to give up Harden.
Yeah, I'm starting to see some speculation the Clippers may try to make a move that may be a little bit more of a Hail Mary than anything to get James Harden. I guess they'd have to put like Paul George in that deal or something like that. And if you're the Rockets, why would you do that? But there's two guys on this team that I actually wouldn't trade. James Harden's one of them. I think he's a top 5 NBA player. You only get a James Harden once in a generation, and I believe they value that. And despite some blunders he's had in the playoffs, this guy is a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
And he's in his prime. I'm not getting rid of him. The other guy who I'm not getting rid of is PJ Tucker. He's the heart and soul of that team. I believe every team kind of needs a glue guy, a grit guy. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He knows his role. He fits modern basketball today. He's tough. He's always draws the toughest assignment. The dude was guarding like Anthony Davis and all the big men in basketball and was forced to play center. Didn't complain once. He's a culture guy. That's the only other guy that I'm leaving off the trades.
Really? So if the Rockets blow it up and they try to trade everybody, you think they're gonna hold on to Tucker?
I mean,
I think you would have a lot of value on the trade
well,
market.
if you're blowing it completely up, why wouldn't you trade James Harden then?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how much are they rebuilding? Are they just going to try to retool the roster around James Harden? Or are they trying to go... If they're completely blowing it up, I think everyone's on the market, even Harden.
Right.
Because what you'd get back for him is ridiculous. I mean, we saw what the Lakers gave up for Anthony Davis. We saw what the Clippers gave up for Paul George. They'd be the same thing for James Harden. Don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of teams would want James Harden on their team. But I do think, though, that if it's just more so like we're going to move a couple guys around and see what we can get, I'm not trading PJ Tucker. I think his value is more than just what the numbers suggest.
I would agree with that. If they're just trying to retool it, I would keep Tucker as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big move that happened, this one a little more expected, not as shocking, Ty Lue becoming the new head coach of the Clippers. He was obviously an assistant there. They fired Doc Rivers. Now he's the guy. They agreed to a 5-year deal, so it looks like long-term they do want Ty Lue to be the guy here. Chauncey Billups, too, also hired as an assistant. I've heard his name around the mulberry bush, if you will, quite a bit. Finally gets his coaching debut, although not a head coach, but an assistant coach. How do you think this move can help the Clippers reach the title?
I think this is a very low-risk move for the Clippers. It's a very high floor and low ceiling kind of move. It doesn't really help them as much as you think it would. Not sure how much this improves the team over what Doc Rivers was doing. The biggest move for this team is going to be what they do with the players over the offseason, how they reshuffle some of the supporting cast, or if they do it all.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Ty Lue has on Doc Rivers is that he's won a championship more recently. I mean, you can attribute that to maybe just the
LeBron.
situation. And LeBron, having, and Kyrie too, both like playing historically great in the NBA Finals, coming back down from 3-1. But I mean, Ty Lue basically pulled off another coup d'etat here, overtaking Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, though, if you were starting a team, right, and you're contending for a championship, would you rather have Doc Rivers or Ty Lue?
The Sixers fan in me tells me Doc Rivers. But I think I would take Ty Lue just because I think Ty Lue is a better players coach, per se, especially for this generation. Doc Rivers played in the NBA, obviously, but that was a while ago, and Ty Lue played as recently as the early 2000s. So I think he kind of understands where players are coming from now, and he dealt with LeBron and Kyrie too, so he knows how to handle big personalities as well.
All right, that's interesting. I think Doc Rivers is a better head coach, but I don't know. Let's see. I mean, Ty Lue, it's his second stint as a head coach. If he succeeds here, then I'll gladly say Ty Lue is the better guy. At least currently speaking. But I think he did a great job with Cleveland. Don't get me wrong. The team was better, and they didn't really make any roster moves once Ty Lue was there. Yeah. He definitely was a better coach than David Blatt, and it showed. But, I mean, that's all we have to go off of. Now he's replacing a potential Hall of Fame head coach in Doc Rivers. So if he can elevate this Clippers team, which will probably be, for the most part, pretty similar rosters last year, then I'm going to be like, yeah, Ty Lue's the guy. But for right now, I need to see him do it again.
Yeah, I think Doc Rivers is better for the Sixers situation than Ty Lue was, and I think Ty Lue is better for the Clippers situation right now than Doc Rivers was.
I agree. I think that Doc Rivers lost the team, clearly. And having a new guy in there, Ty Lue, maybe he can re-win them back. But also, a little bit about Clippers talk here. There's rumors that teammates were unhappy with how the team handled Kawhi Leonard compared to the rest of the players. Obviously, Kawhi is the star of that team. He has, Mr. Load Management himself. He's, gets special treatment, apparently rub players the wrong way. How much do you buy into this rumor? I know Lou Williams said that's not true, but do you believe this at all?
Well, I was going to say Lou Williams already came out and said that this was false, but I can understand their contentiousness if it were true. Having a star player get special treatment like the way he was alleged to be getting really divides a team, and especially with strong personalities like you have with Montrezl Harrell and Pat Beverly. They haven't come out and said anything that said it was false, so I think it might have rubbed them the wrong way, and if it's rubbing those guys the wrong way, it's probably rubbing a lot of guys in that team the wrong way.
Yeah, I personally think it probably rubbed them the wrong way. Because I can see it. Because Kawhi Leonard, it's like the dude's perfectly healthy and he's just sitting out games.
Right.
Like, he's the thing with Kawhi Leonard, fantastic player. I mean, despite his Game 7 blunder, let's not forget, this guy almost single-handedly carried a team to the championship last season and won it. And I believe youngest player to ever win Finals MVP, all that fun stuff. But Kawhi Leonard, like, he's not a leader. You know what I mean? Like, when the Spurs won, Tim Duncan was the leader of that team. When the Raptors won, Kyle Lowry was the leader of that team. You can say all you want about Pat Beverly. He's not any of those guys. Like,
yeah.
So I think they need to find that guy, and we'll get into a little later who that guy may be. But I think they need a true voice of that locker room. It's obviously not Paul George either. You have Lou Williams out here, sacrificing, going to the strip club over playing basketball games. Like, this team was clearly dysfunctional. They had the talent, but they just didn't have the mindset that some of these other teams had in the bubble.
Yeah, and I think with something like this, too, you really have to question whether Kawhi is fitting the culture that the Clippers have, because the Clippers have a very gritty, get-in-your-face kind of culture, especially with Pat Beverly leading the charge there. Does Kawhi really fit that?
I mean, this is where he wanted to be, He's talking all that smack, saying he was the king of L.A., blah, 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 and didn't really live up to it, so just saying. But anyways, though, let's go to the other team in LA. That's the Lakers. Really interesting. They request a career-ending injury application, that's what they're calling it, to get off Luol Deng's cap. And, oh my God, Mitch Kupchak and his horrible decisions are still haunting the Lakers, and this is just sad. But do you think this move is actually being overlooked? Because I think that if the Lakers could get a lot of money off Luol Deng's contract, they're going to have a lot more money to spend in free agency.
Yeah, I think it's definitely being overlooked considering I haven't heard that name in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you think the NBA will actually accept this application, though? And, how much is a lot of money?
I mean, Luol Deng, I wonder how much dead cap there is. I didn't really look into it. But Luol Deng signed like a $18 million per year contract.
Right, I knew that.
So this guy's getting paid a ton of money. Again, why did Mitch Kupchak do this? Well, why did he have to go out like that? I mean, come on. But
Shades of Elton Brand, baby.
Oh, man. Exactly. But so I do think, this actually could make a difference because the Lakers, they have a lot of cap space technically entering free agency, but we all know where that's going. That's going to Anthony Davis.
Right.
So any extra money they can get to either sign another guy or make another move with that money actually does go a long way for the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree too. And, they're definitely going to retool this roster because, this happens every time a team wins a championship. Players are going to get their money. And, any player that hits the open market, I'm not sure how many free agents the Lakers will have this year, but any player that's going to hit the open market is going to get more money from another team just because they were in the NBA Finals and they won the championship.
And also, too, the Lakers have a lot of guys who are being vastly underpaid on this team. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can say what you want, but Kyle Kuzma's on a rookie deal. He's getting paid like $2 million a year.
Rondo's on a cheap deal.
Dwight Howard signed bare minimum money. I mean, I don't think he's coming back. I think someone else is going to sign him, but he got him for super cheap. Contavious Caldwell-Pope's probably going to demand more money on the market based on how he played in the finals.
I think McGee has a player option.
Yep. Alex Caruso is getting paid like nothing, basically.
G League money.
Yeah, and he's obviously a big part of what the Lakers do. They signed Avery Bradley, who we all forgot about, but he was on a pretty cheap deal as well. They got him off waivers. So the Lakers have a lot of guys who are really underpaid. So if they can get more money, I mean, they can really retool this roster and try to go for it again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves they make to retool the roster.
Most definitely. And another head coaching hire, this one a little more not as big as a Ty Lue one, not as expected, but the Indiana Pacers, we've been talking about their head coaching search for the last couple podcasts. They finally got their guy, Raptors assistant coach Nate Bjorkgren. I think I said that right. I wrote out the phonetic pronunciation to try to get it, but he is now the new head coach of the team. Nate McMillan, his firing, they even included in his announcement that he went 3-16 in the playoffs. I mean, Matt, this organization has no chill whatsoever.
Yeah, that was a nice little slap on the butt on the way out there. A little kick on the butt there on the way out the door.
Anyways, though, looking at Bjorkgren, he was started his coaching career at Arizona. Then he transitioned to the G League, where he was actually Nick Nurse's assistant from 2007 to 2011, helped the Iowa Energy win the 2011 G League title, or actually at that time it was the D League. But he then became the Santa Cruz Warriors head coach, which is the Warriors G League team, and then led them to the finals as well. Then became an assistant to Jeff Hornacek in Phoenix, then joined Nick Nurse again in Toronto. Now he's got his first head coaching opportunity here. What do you think of this hire? Do you think the Pacers hired the next Nick Nurse?
I definitely don't think the next Nick Nurse, but clearly the Pacers have a fetish for Nates. Just hiring Nates out the wazoo here. I think we're just beginning to see a trend of teams hiring candidates that aren't really on anyone else's radar. Sure, we'll always have the D'Antonis and the Van Gundys, but I think it's good for the league to get some fresh faces to coach teams instead of just recycling the same coaches. And for that reason alone, I like this hire. I wouldn't say he's the next Nick Nurse, but I like the hire.
I'm very interested, too, because, I mean, the Raptors do a great job developing young guys and finding diamonds in the rough and stuff like that. And even the Pacers have done a pretty nice job, too. I mean, Victor Oladipo, took a huge step forward after he got traded there. Domantas Sabonis, same thing. I think he played his rookie year there because he got traded during the NBA draft, so he's always been a Pacer, became an all-star. TJ Warren got traded there, and he kind of broke out, too. And then they got some guys like Aaron Holiday and things like that there that have looked pretty good for them. So they've done a nice job developing talent there as well. And the Raptors obviously are one of the best teams at doing that. But are we beginning to kind of see a trend of the G League coaches getting head coaching jobs? It kind of seems that way.
Yeah, it does seem like that. And, you can't ignore this guy's pedigree. Championships are championships no matter what level it is. And if you get a team to, buy into whatever you're telling them to do and whatever you're coaching them to do, that says a lot about you as a person.
Yep, and let's not forget he was there with the Toronto Raptors when they won that championship, so he does have experience as an assistant coach, winning championships, head coach in the G League and other levels. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you play to win, and you want winners there. And the Pacers have been a team that's kind of been very good, but they haven't taken that next step, and maybe a change at the head coaching position does it.
I still think they need a guy. They need one guy.
I think you're right, too. But maybe they can win some more games and maybe try to make a move to get that guy.
May I interest you in Al Horford?
I think they will hang up the phone after.
I'll take Domantas Sabonis off your hands.
Yeah,
for Al Horford.
You want Al Horford?
He's an NCAA champion, Hunter.
Yeah, back to back.
Championship pedigree. They want it. They need it.
Yeah, they want that championship pedigree. We're just gonna have a podcast, just dedicating teams, just like a hotline, being like, Al Horford's on the block.
I'll call him up. We got plenty of references over here in the College of Comm, so I can do it.
Yeah, might as well, right? But anyways, though, some more stuff that wasn't necessarily on the court related or having an impact. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is honoring Kobe Bryant himself. They're displaying his 2008 jersey. That's the year he won MVP, which he actually donated to them before he passed, and I believe he also went to the museum before it even opened. So I guess it's a nice gesture, and it kind of shows the kind of icon that Kobe was.
Yeah, obviously a huge icon with his death here. Really choosing ways to honor him. I think this is a great thing for them. But I do think it's interesting that he gave them this jersey. It's an NBA Finals jersey, correct?
I think so.
Of a series the Lakers lost. He was like, I don't want this anymore. You guys can have it.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you ever heard the story that you may have heard this, but he was 2008, that was the Olympics, and the women's team was over there too. And Sue Bird said that it was obviously this was months after, they lost. And Kobe cut out a picture of Paul Pierce in a newspaper, and then he pretty much was just like, I'm getting redemption. Or he said motivation or something, put it in his pocket, and she was like, holy God, Jesus. Like,
That sounds a lot like Kobe to me.
yeah,
I believe it.
That's some crazy stuff right there.
By the way, Sue Bird, any relation to Larry?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Just had to clear that up.
Yeah, I don't think so. But she does win like him too. She's got a lot of championships. I think we talked about that
Yeah, we did.
podcast or two ago. But John Wall, this was pretty fun. I don't know if you saw this. He was getting interviewed, and he was literally just playing spades during it. Like, kept his game going, wasn't stopping at all. But in all honesty, though, I mean, you can talk about what you thought about it, but what can we expect from John Wall next season?
I think it's going to take some time for him to get back into the swing of things. But once he's played about 15 to 20 games, I expect him to be close to the same player he was before he was injured, but not the exact same player he was when he was in his prime. Because obviously, an Achilles injury, whether you do it in a stupid way or not, is still an Achilles injury, and it's still going to affect the way you play a game where you have to run back and forth all the time. So
Yeah.
it should be interesting to see how he bounces back.
Also, too, I mean, John Wall is probably one of the most physically gifted, most athletic point guards I've ever seen
Right.
play basketball. Like, this guy thrived. One of the fastest players in the NBA when he was playing with the ball in his hands. I mean, this guy is so fast and athletic. And Achilles injury, of course, kind of affects that a little bit. So I'm curious to see, he's going to have to rely a little bit more on his playmaking ability, which he's really good at, his decision-making, his ability. I think, can still get to the basket, create contact, create for others, get his own bucket as well. Hopefully he worked on his jump shot a little bit, though, because that's kind of been the weak point of his game. Because if he starts knocking down threes, I mean, this guy is a really good player.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to take kind of the D Rose approach to this, like really have to change his game and go after, kind of model his game after what D Rose has done in here in the last 2 years, where he's become a much better shooter and much better overall player because he lost all that explosiveness.
Exactly. I mean, we're curious to see. I think Derrick Rose had a little bit more chronic issues than John Wall did. This is the only serious injury John Wall's had. But yeah, I'm curious to see how he looks, especially with Bradley Beal there. I mean, I think if I'm the Wizards, I run that back one more time just to see how can these two, do I have something with this backcourt? And then if not, then I think you start tearing it down.
They have 8 seed written all over him.
Yep, pretty much. Unless John Wall is that good and Bradley Beal just has an MVP caliber season, which could happen. It's
Yeah,
not
might get
out
him
of
the
the realm.
7 seed.
But might get them to the 7 seed then, because the rest of that roster is doo-doo. But anyways, though, last but not least on our Around the Association, I thought this was a little bit interesting. We like, talking about some shade and some beef on this podcast, but the Nuggets, they made a social media post with an all-time graphic of all-time best players, and certain Nugget wasn't on that list, and that was Carmelo Anthony. And then the Portland Trailblazers, who of course Melo played for only half the season or 3/4 of the season, they put him on theirs. So this is clearly a shot at Melo, right?
If it wasn't a diss at Melo, I don't know what else would be.
Yeah.
Why would they leave him off? What's the beef? Is there beef there?
Well, I think Melo is basically I don't want to play for a small market team anymore. I'm going to New York.
But didn't they trade him?
They did, and they got a lot for him.
Yeah, so I don't understand what the beef there is. He played 7 great seasons there.
Yeah.
Put that team on his back to carry them to the Western Conference Finals.
He did. Yeah. Melo was great there, and he growing up, he was probably one of my favorite players to watch because he was so good there. But and had some great battles with the Lakers as a youngin. I was watching those, but yeah. I mean, I don't really understand why they're salty still. I mean, Melo is one of the greatest players to ever put on the Nuggets uniform. And at the end of the day, he's done what many other players have done, which is walk and leave. At least he got traded.
Yeah. I mean, if I had a chance to live in Denver or New York, I'd probably pick New York too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't really blame him here. But also, too, the Blazers, they kind of have a bone to pick with LaMarcus Aldridge a bit also. No one wants to talk about that. I mean, I think that was even more of a diss that they didn't put him on that list.
I don't even know if I saw was Brandon Roy on that graphic?
Brandon Roy was on the
okay,
graphic.
good, because he deserves to be on there.
Yeah.
LaMarcus Aldridge not being on there is questionable, though. Very questionable.
I mean, I'd say he's one. I think each team had 5 players. I mean, he's definitely one of the 5 best players to ever play for Portland.
Yeah. Was Bill Walton on there?
Bill Walton was on.
All
I
right,
think
good.
Dame and
McCollum?
Hold on. It was Dame, Melo, which again that was more of intentional, taking a shot at Denver. Brandon Roy, I believe Clyde Drexler was on there.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then I think Bill Walton. So I mean, I guess I'd probably put LaMarcus. I mean, with all due respect to Brandon Roy, I mean LaMarcus Aldridge had a better career longevity wise, just because unfortunately Brandon Roy got hurt. That's You're mad.
But Portland loves Brandon Roy.
I know. I'm just saying, though.
They know what they're doing. They're playing into the fans' hands.
Yeah, I mean.
They love Brandon Roy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Brandon Roy, again, was like an absolute phenom. The guy was insane.
Oh, he was awesome.
He was so good. I literally have one friend who's a Portland Trailblazers fan, and he still is, but he became a fan solely because of Brandon Roy.
As he should.
Yeah, as he should. But, yeah, so I thought it was interesting LaMarcus Aldridge wasn't on there either, but he's a pretty quiet guy, and no one really talked about that.
Yeah, he went to the Spurs for a reason.
Yeah.
Everybody would leave him alone.
Same thing. But anyways, though, it's going to wrap up around the association. We're still going to be doing Players of the Week. We're not basing it off of games. We're more so just kind of giving 3 players that we kind of just want to talk about. Maybe, see where we kind of go with this. So this is kind of off the top. We didn't tell each other who we're talking about. So if we have 3 of the same play, if we share players, I'd be shocked. I didn't go super bold like I normally do, so there's a chance. But I want to know who's first on your list, Matt.
Yeah, if we have the same list here, I'm going to be astonished.
Yeah.
I went with some under-the-radar free agents in the 2020 class.
Okay.
Okay. All right, good. I went with DeMarcus Cousins, first off. He obviously missed the whole year this year with a torn ACL, but he is still eligible to get a ring from the Lakers because he sat on their bench during the non-COVID games. He is a free agent this year, and obviously his career has severely declined since his injury in New Orleans. What interest, if any, do you think he gets on the open market?
I mean, I think so. I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, if the Lakers throw a flyer at him, especially if they lose Dwight Howard, because obviously they signed him in the first place, and they signed Dwight Howard to replace DeMarcus Cousins. So I think they may throw a bare minimum contract at him. He does, he was around the team. I think they all genuinely liked him. And, I think that they had plans to incorporate him in the lineup so they can just actually go out and do that this time.
Yeah, really make him earn that ring,
Yeah.
Put it in like a glass case or something, and it's like only once you play a certain amount of minutes can
Just
you
have
wear
it like
this
hanging
ring.
on a string.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
like a pendulum. Like
Exactly. Like he can't get it yet unless you play a certain amount of minutes.
Yeah.
Unless you make LeBron super happy.
Yeah.
You cannot have this ring.
Yeah. So I think that DeMarcus Cousins would be. I think a lot. I would take a flyer on him for like a vet's minimum. Like because like you're banking on the upside. Like if this guy's healthy. Even when he was playing for the Warriors, he had some really good games for them. Like, once he started getting in a groove. I mean, the guy's been killed with the injuries. I feel so bad for him. I mean, he tore his quad, tore his Achilles, and tore his ACL. Like, oh, my God, that's ridiculous.
You got to question whether he has any legs left at all.
Yeah. I think also with DeMarcus Cousins, too, is that I think he was rushing through returning with all of these injuries, and now he's got a full offseason to really kind of truly get back into shape and truly be fully healthy. So maybe we will see a different DeMarcus Cousins. I'm not ruling out a redemption comeback. I don't think he'll be the same player, but I think he can definitely become a pretty serviceable player again.
I think so too. I could totally see him going to a team like the Suns or the Grizzlies or something, just some like random team.
Yeah, I mean he's really talented, DeMarcus Cousins. I mean,
obviously.
Yeah, he can do so many different things on the basketball court. I mean, he was one of the best bigs in basketball easily, arguably the best. You can make an argument for him. But I'm curious to see how he does. That was a good pick. Next on my list, not a free agent, but it's a guy we haven't talked about in a really long time, mainly because this guy was not playing in the bubble.
If you say RJ Barrett, I'm going to
It's not, actually, but it's a guy who was one of the best players not in the bubble, and I think I'm really curious to see kind of what he does next season. And that's Trae Young.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I think people kind of overlook how good of a year. This guy was top 5 in points and assists in his second year in the NBA. He sucks on defense. We know that.
Right.
He's not the most efficient player. I get that. But the numbers he's been putting up were phenomenal. And he was a really hard guard. He was a starter in the All-Star game this season. I mean, and I'm really curious to see where the Hawks, how they build this team around him, because they have their franchise guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no question that he can score, and there's no question even that the Hawks offense can score. We've seen them score 120 points routinely. The problem is defense, and no matter how much you want to love Trae Young, how he is on offense, defense is still half the game, and he needs to get at least to a point where he's average on defense for this team to go anywhere.
I mean, obviously we want to compare Trae Young to Steph Curry, and I honestly think the comparisons are fair based on like how they play and the trajectory Trae Young could potentially be on. But Steph Curry, while physically he's not a super athletic, strong person, like he obviously, gets picked on defense a little bit, Steph Curry's a really smart defender. He's great off the ball. He gets in passing lanes. He knows when to be in the right position at what time and things like that. If Trae Young mentally can become a more savvy defensive player, again, he's never going to be an all-NBA lockdown guy, but if he can kind of follow that playbook, I think Trae Young could be a much better player on that side of the ball.
I agree, and I think if he models his game after Curry, like you said on the defensive end, Steph Curry led the league in steals when he won unanimous MVP in 2016. So I think if Trae Young can find a niche on defense, like getting a lot of steals, I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, Trae Young had to carry so much of the load on offense there, both passing and playmaking and scoring. So if they can get a guy or two more, or maybe one of their young guys steps up more and can become more of a great offensive player. Also, that team is just terrible on defense too. So if they can get a couple more guys that can really, help Trae Young. I mean, I look at a team like the Warriors that built their defense around Steph Curry, essentially. The 76ers with Allen Iverson built their defense around Iverson. Like, he's going to score 30 a game, but we got to make sure we guard everybody else. So I think that they should follow that kind of mentality with Trae Young.
Aaron McKee.
Yep. They had Eric Snow. A very old Dikembe Mutombo. Yeah. So I think that if they follow that'd be a lot more beneficial for the Hawks. But I want to know, Matt, who else is on your list?
Mr. Jordan Clarkson.
Ooh.
He had a huge year off the bench once he was traded to Utah, as he averaged 15 points per game. And once he began shooting threes, he really upped his game and his value, because as we know, he was used to taking really long twos for whatever reason, and all he had to do was step 2 feet back for those points to be a little bit more, and now he's hitting threes. I could totally see him going to the Lakers to team up with LBJ again as a great bench scoring option, but also wouldn't mind if he came to the Sixers.
I mean, I do actually own a Jordan Clarkson jersey.
No, you do not.
I do. I own a Jordan Clarkson jersey.
What team?
Lakers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, this is the dark ages of the Lakers,
my
where I had to buy
goodness.
jerseys of guys who were like maybe going to be good NBA
Save
players.
your money, Hunter. Go to Chick-fil-A a couple times. Come on, man. A Jordan Clarkson jersey?
Hey, he was good for the Lakers. He was.
For the 15-win Lakers, yeah.
It gave me something to root for, okay, Matt?
I wasn't out here buying T.J. McConnell jerseys, as much as I would love to. I wasn't out here buying T.J. McConnell jerseys.
I mean, hey, sometimes you got to buy the bad jerseys so the good ones feel that much better, okay?
I'm not buying Jahlil Okafor jerseys, Hunter.
Oh, my God. I mean, Jahlil Okafor, jeez.
No.
That one hurts a little bit, but...
You couldn't even find a Jordan Clarkson jersey at a thrift shop.
Yeah, I had one. I had a white Jordan Clarkson jersey, so maybe I can break that out once again if he re-signs with the Lakers. Hopefully he wears the same number. Knowing him, you'll be like, I want to wear 8. And be like, no, you can't do that.
I want to wear number 000.
Yeah, 000. But so he is a free agent this year. Is that
Yes.
Yeah. He's a really interesting player because, I mean, look, you know what you're getting out of him. This guy's not great on defense. You're getting him to score points. And I really like the fit with Donovan Mitchell, and the fact that they traded for him. I think Utah has got to be aggressive to keep him, especially seeing Mike Conley not be as good and Donovan Mitchell playing a lot more like point guard, if you will. You need another scorer, and I think Jordan Clarkson fit that role perfectly. So when Donovan Mitchell's out, you keep that in, but they actually played well together too.
Yeah, and when Bogdanovich comes back to put Clarkson in a perfect role off the bench. Perfect role.
Yeah, I mean, I think he actually will be a pretty highly coveted guy and played really well in the bubble too and in the playoffs, which, he wasn't great in the playoffs for Cleveland, but was a lot better in Utah.
I could also see him going to a team like the Blazers or like the Mavericks or something.
Yeah, they could use another weapon or two off the bench. But another guy on my list, and I'm really excited to see him play again. He has been out since he tore his ACL in the NBA Finals. He still went to the line, though, shot 2 free throws, made them both. And that was the last time we saw him on an NBA court, and that's Klay Thompson. This guy is a really good NBA player, really, really good. A big reason why the Warriors were as successful as they've been over these last 6 or so years. He's really developed his game. He kind of came in more as just a catch-and-shoot guy. Now he's a great NBA defender. He can score off the dribble, can score in a lot of different ways, has a good post-up game as well. I'm really curious to see how he comes back from injury. Like you said with DeMarcus Cousins, I'm really curious to see how Klay Thompson looks and if the Warriors can get back to being a really good team again.
Yeah, and you really, with Thompson, we kind of forget, is there anybody better in the league when he is hot? I mean,
Not really.
He's had that 37-point quarter. He's had
Yeah.
60-some points against the poor Bulls.
Yep.
And, when he has carried that team through some really rough shooting stretches. Remember Game 6 against Oklahoma City when
Yeah.
nobody could make a
Mr.
basket?
Game 6.
Mr. Game 6. All he could do was bring that team to a Game 7.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Matt. Great. And that's why I'm excited to see him play again, because Klay Thompson is a really good NBA player. We talk about, two-way wings being maybe the most valuable position in basketball, and Klay Thompson does that. And I think a big key for the Warriors' success, why, they were able to win those championships, is because Klay Thompson became that second bona fide option. Then they got Kevin Durant, but he became the second bona fide option and proved that I can be, I can help Steph Curry out and carry the offense if needed.
Yeah, I think him and Steph Curry is like a match made in heaven. It's honestly a treat to basketball fans to get to watch them play together. And like I said, when those two are shooting the ball lights out, there's nothing more fun in the sport to watch.
Yeah, and Klay Thompson's not a player that relies heavily on his athleticism anyway, so I do think that he'll come back pretty strong. He's had a lot of time to rest, and I think Klay Thompson's definitely going to light it up this year.
Yeah.
So, number 3 on your list, Matt, who do you got?
Hassan Whiteside obviously doesn't
Ew.
fit in. I know. Obviously doesn't fit in Portland anymore with Nurkic healthy and significantly better. Much like what happened to him in Miami with Adebayo. His stats look great, but don't factor in his putrid defense and awful shooting abilities, along with the fact that he doesn't know what spacing is. Are his days of playing for a contender over, considering the deep dive off traditional bigs have taken over the last few years? I think he might be done playing for a contender.
I probably agree with you. Again, had nice numbers this year. I believe he was toward the top of the NBA in rebounding. I believe he actually led the league in blocks. But like you said, Matt, look, there's guys out there that can get steals, that can get blocks. That does not mean you're a good defensive player. Hassan Whiteside can't guard anybody.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
It would be a darn shame if the Celtics signed him.
Yeah.
Darn
Oh,
shame.
my God.
It would be a
The
darn
Sixers
shame.
sign him?
It would be. Why would you say that? Why would you? We have Joel Embiid.
I'm speaking.
And Embiid has Hassan Whiteside's number. He wouldn't come.
Yeah. Well, they did sign Al Horford, so.
Why? Hunter, why are you doing this?
Yeah, you know it was coming.
I know, but why? Let me say it.
But Hassan Whiteside, I agree with you. I think some desperate team like the Kings will probably sign him to $20 million a year, and then they'll be like, "Great, we're gonna win 30 games again this year."
Yep.
And
With
then
Luke
you have to
Walton
like
at the helm.
you have to convince yourself that Hassan Whiteside's a good player, but then you watch him play like, oh nope, there it is.
Yep. Routinely getting out rebounded.
Yep, I think that's what we're gonna see. That dude was. I remember everyone was like, "Oh, watch out for the Lakers because Hassan Whiteside and Yusuf Nurkic are gonna stop Anthony Davis." I'm like, that didn't work.
Yusuf Nurkic tried his best, but Hassan Whiteside did not try his best.
No, yeah, not at all. But so my last player on the list is a free agent, and I'm very curious to see where he's gonna go because he's been kind of very vocal about it on social media. I saw him post a pic yesterday saying, "Where should I go next?" Literally that. And that's Danilo Gallinari.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a really good NBA player. Like this
Very
guy
underrated.
can score, around 20 a game. Really good passer. He's a great shooter. He's always like about 90% from the free throw line. Can hit threes. Can score in a lot of different ways. Can play different positions on the court. He's kind of what you want in a modern day forward. Actually, I mean, Danilo Gallinari is really good. I've been hearing Laker rumors potentially, and I don't know if that's because everyone's always rumored to the Lakers.
Yeah,
but
pretty
he
much.
posted a thing saying congrats to the Lakers on winning a championship, which makes no sense because he has never played for the Lakers and has no affiliation with them whatsoever. So where do you think Gallinari can go next, and how much money do you think a guy like him can demand on the
Well,
market?
just me brainstorming as you said his name here in the last 30 seconds, I'm thinking of a team like the Phoenix Suns or the Memphis Grizzlies would both need a wing badly that can score. I think he would fit greatly in either of those situations, and obviously both those teams have a lot of cap room, so they could probably throw more money at him than he would basically be valued at. So I think he'd fit really well in either of those teams.
Yeah, also, too, that's really interesting with Gallinari is he actually said after this season that he's willing to take less money to play for a contender. So this is a
so then
guy.
he's going to Miami.
So this guy wants to win a championship. He cares about winning, clearly. He has the numbers. He's played for a lot of different teams, but he wants to win. And obviously, he really helped with the Thunder this year. Probably the least talked about player on that team in terms of like their big guys. Like Chris Paul was fantastic. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander broke out. Dennis Schroeder, in my opinion, should have been Sixth Man of the Year. But Gallinari was really good for that team too. He's been really good. He's really good for the Clippers, obviously, and that's where they got him from. I think Gallinari, if he's, I think he can be a big player for really any team and help them win a championship.
Yeah, I just thought of two more teams as you were talking there.
all right.
Toronto and Milwaukee.
Okay.
Both could definitely use a 3 or a 4 there.
I see the Raptors a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely I was definitely thinking the Raptors. That was the one I went ooh about.
Yeah.
And then also my only gripe with Gallinari is that he missed a wide open Steven Adams rolling to the cup in Game 7 of the first round when he was just to tie the game, and he just threw it to Chris Paul anyway.
Yeah.
That's my only gripe with him.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, hey, you gotta make winning plays in order to win. That's how basketball works. But anyways, though, that's gonna wrap up our players of the week. We're gonna talk about Danilo Gallinari's former teammate, and that is Chris Paul. There's a lot of rumors surrounding him. I remember we were talking about, is Chris Paul, does he even have any value on the market? He does, clearly.
Yeah.
The guy was phenomenal this season, All-NBA, one of the best leaders, one of the best winners, in my opinion, even though he doesn't have a chip, but one of the best winners in the NBA. And we're going to talk about, some teams that should they trade for him? Do they have what it takes to get him? And the first team we're actually going to talk about here is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Should they even try to trade him? Should they just keep him flat out? Or do you think that, for the right price, they should give him up?
They need to trade him. They want to rebuild. He does not want to and will not allow them to obviously rebuild. Maximize on his unexpectedly high value now, because you don't want to be stuck in that daunting middle ground of the NBA where you aren't in the lottery and you aren't doing anything in the playoffs. The Thunder need to commit to either side, and I think they would rather commit to rebuilding, especially with all the capital they got from the Clippers.
I 100% agree with you. The Thunder need to do one of two things. Either use that capital, all those picks, to get another guy, or you trade Chris Paul. And I think the easier one is to trade Chris Paul because he is older. This is a guy that, wants to play for a contender. They obviously let Billy Donovan walk despite having a great season. So clearly they are looking to rebuild, and it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have a guy like Chris Paul there to rebuild. He obviously had a great season, but I do think they're going to trade him. So let's talk about some teams that may trade for him. Now, Chris Paul was supposed to go to the Lakers back in 2012, but David Stern's like, no. Mm-hmm. So I wondered this time around, though, do you think that the Lakers would make a move for Chris Paul? And do you think that that's what they need to do to go back-to-back?
I don't think they need him at all. I think they just proved that. I also think that keeping LeBron at point guard is what is going to prolong his career. I also think that having LeBron run point is what works best for that team right now. And I don't think that Chris Paul would necessarily fit what the Lakers are trying to do right now.
Yeah, I think the Lakers would probably have to give up a lot to get him. I guess the question is, what you're giving up, is it worth Chris Paul? It may be. I wouldn't necessarily root against it. I don't think they need Chris Paul, but I do think that having him there would probably be an upgrade for what they already have.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't see it. I'd say that, it worked this year to get to the finals. They were the odds-on favorite to win the finals pretty much the whole year. It worked. I just don't think they need Chris Paul.
I will say, I do think the Lakers are going to make some big move in the offseason, though.
Really?
I think something's coming. Not sure exactly what that's going to be.
Trade for Bronny?
Bronny. Yeah, Bronny's going to come. But let's look at the other LA team. The team that he played for, Los Angeles Clippers. There's actually been rumors that they may make a move for him. I want to ask you, should they bring him back? And do you think that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, is that not enough?
Would the Clippers even have the cap space to pull this off?
I mean, they'd probably have to give up Pat Beverly, Lou Williams, guys like Landry Shamet. They don't have a whole lot of picks to give up.
Former Sixer Landry Shamet?
Yeah, I will say this, he was way better with the Sixers. So
heck yeah, he was.
Yeah, not so good with the Clippers.
I also, the Clippers just traded with OKC last offseason for George, and they gave up every remotely good asset they had. There's no way they'd be able to pull this off, and I don't think they would want to, especially if they have to give up Beverly, Lou Williams, or Montrezl Harrell, or any guys like that. Or actually, isn't Harrell a free agent?
He's a free agent.
Okay, never mind. I didn't say that. Especially giving up those guys, those guards. If they trade all those guys, then they have no depth behind Chris Paul, which was always their problem.
Yeah,
when
he was
with the
there.
Clippers, yeah.
I'll say this. if you're the Clippers and the Thunder, they won't do this, but I'm just curious. If they offered Paul George for Chris Paul straight up, would you accept that?
For which side? If
you're like which one would you rather? Would you rather have like which team would you rather be after that deal?
Well, that just doesn't make any sense for the Thunder. If they're trying to trade Chris Paul and they get Paul George back, Paul George isn't going to carry a team like the way Chris Paul did, and especially with the way he was shooting bricks off the side of the backboard. And, that's just unless they flipped Paul George as soon as they got him, that doesn't make any sense.
But if you're the Clippers, would you rather have Chris Paul or Paul George?
Ooh, that's the question you were trying to ask.
Maybe you can have Chris Paul George, combine them.
A new definition to CP3.
Yeah.
I think I would rather have
CP13. Got him on that one.
Oh, the dad jokes in this podcast are incredible. I think I would rather have. I'd rather have Paul George just because Chris Paul is older, and you gotta think that what Paul George did in the postseason this year, that was a fluke. That's what you're hoping for.
I'd rather have Chris Paul because I don't think it's a fluke. I think Paul George just sucks in the playoffs.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Except for that one time with Indiana.
Yeah, that one time he had the great. Give him credit, he did it. But that was in 2013. It's 2020, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, get your act together.
Yeah, come on, man, 2020.
Yeah, come on. So I'd actually rather have Chris Paul.
Okay.
That's my opinion, though. Next team, a team that I've been almost begging to make this trade for like years now, is the Milwaukee Bucks. I want to know, well, I think we can agree that Giannis probably does need another co-star to win. So I'm not even going to ask that question. But do you think that trading for Chris Paul would convince Giannis to stay? Apparently the Bucks aren't looking to trade Giannis this season. They're looking to rebuild the roster. So is Chris Paul, would that be enough for Giannis to be like, I'll sign another deal here?
I'm not sure how much trading for CP3 would convince Giannis to stay longer than this year, just because of CP3's age, and it's reasonable to wonder how much he's got left, even though he did play really well this year. But I do think that making this move now would certainly make Giannis happier than he is right now.
Okay. I mean, I think if you're the Bucks, I would do it. I mean, like, they need another guy there.
They have no reason not to.
They have no reason not to. They have the pieces to do it. They're a really deep team. So if you trade a couple of your depth away, you still have a lot of good players, role players. And, Eric Bledsoe clearly is not the answer at point guard there. He has failed to show up every single time they've been in the playoffs. Chris Paul is, obviously he was great in the playoffs, great in the regular season, and just overall better player than Eric Bledsoe is. So if I'm them, I make that move, and I do whatever I can to make Giannis happy and convince him to stay.
Yeah, but I just don't know how much 36-year-old Chris Paul is going to want him to. Is going to convince Giannis to stay more than a year.
I mean, you never know. I mean, if they win a championship with him, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think the Bucks need to be aggressive. They can't just let things happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Now another team that's interesting, and I made a whole video on this, is the New York Knicks. Leon Rose, who is now the GM of the Knicks, was Chris Paul's agent. So they have a really strong connection. You've heard, so the rumors, I'm not making things up here. Like, there definitely are rumors out there. Do you think that the Knicks need a spark, like getting a Chris Paul to help reboot this franchise?
As flashy as a move this may be, the Knicks should not do it. For once, they need to at least see a rebuild all the way through, although this does have Knicks written all over them, getting a star way after his prime. This just has Knicks written all over it. But trading for CP3 right now quite literally makes no sense in terms of where they are as an organization right now. And if I were CP3, I would be doing everything I could to avoid this trade. I think if I got traded to the Knicks, I would retire.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how Chris Paul thinks about it, but I actually completely disagree with that. I'd trade for Chris Paul. What do they have to give up?
But that does nothing for them in terms of their rebuilding, because he's not going to want to rebuild.
It sparks the rebuild, and Chris Paul has shown that he can elevate
Sparks
teams.
What? What rebuild? They've done nothing so far.
They have 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years.
And what are they going to? They have the number 8 pick this year.
Well,
what is that going to do?
I'm saying that if you can, try to trade up in the draft potentially and get a guy like an Anthony Edwards or LaMelo Ball, you get Chris Paul there, you have to create, the Knicks need a culture, right?
Yeah,
their culture is
absolutely,
awful.
but they have no other players. They have no assets to give up.
But you just give up everybody. and then you're fine.
Then what do they have? They have Chris Paul and what?
Well, their whole team's basically G League guys anyway, so now it's G League guys and Chris Paul.
You got to hold on to the guys that at least have some value, like Mitchell Robinson, even R.J. Barrett.
I don't think they give up those guys. I think they give up like Julius Randle, bad contract.
Well, nobody wants Julius Randle.
Well, if the Thunder are just trying to get anything for Chris Paul, then if the Knicks are the best team that can give the Thunder what they need, you make them move.
But this is just so Knicks in the fact that they're trying to expedite a rebuild that is not ready to advance past this point of the stage yet.
It's sparking a rebuild. That's what I'm saying. You're creating a culture. Like, look at the
But
Clippers.
they have nothing to go off of yet.
Look at the Clippers. They didn't really rebuild, right? They traded their guys. They developed a culture that convinced Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to want to go there.
But the Clippers were never as bad as the Knicks are right now. Never.
That's not entirely true. The Clippers
they made the playoffs before Paul George and Kawhi Leonard got there.
Historically speaking, though, the Clippers are just as bad as the Knicks.
But not in this decade.
Not in this decade. But I'm saying because they made the right moves and got the right guys.
Oh, Hunter,
What reason is there for them not to do that?
Because it does nothing for the rebuild. All this does is put them more in the tank financially, and all it does is destroy their rebuild. Destroys it.
What are the Knicks
because
rebuilding?
then it puts them into mediocrity, which is where you don't want to be in the NBA.
I don't think they're going to be like 8 seed. If they are the 8 seed, cool. Like
no, Hunter. I'm not even a Knicks fan. I hate the Knicks, but this makes no sense.
But if you're a Knicks fan, you're sick and tired of losing. You don't play in the NBA.
Would you rather
lose.
be an 8 seed every year, or would you rather rebuild so you can get to a championship?
They're not clearly doing that. They need to take action to their own hands.
Exactly. They need to continue to rebuild until they get a star player. RJ Barrett is not a star player.
I know you're a Sixer fan. You're used to just tanking seasons away.
Oh my God. But the Knicks have nothing to go off of right now. They have done nothing that shows that they are ready to take that next step. Nothing.
Well, trading for Chris Paul would.
No, but what would that get them to? 36 wins, maybe the 8th seed in the East.
Well, maybe you can convince.
Then you're mediocre. Then you're
Chris
out of
Paul,
the lottery.
Chris Paul elevates guys and makes them better. And people want to play with a guy like Chris Paul. This is not. Oh my God! You gotta be kidding me here. You're winning.
You've got to be kidding me. Are you serious?
I would make the move if I'm the Knicks. I make the move.
I mean, I would be happy if they did it because it'd just be stupid Knicks again. But oh my God, it makes no sense, Hunter.
How does it not make sense?
I just told you why.
I disagree
5
with
minutes.
that. I disagree with that. I'd make the move for Chris Paul. You can only lose for so long. But let's talk about a team that was pretty mediocre in the playoffs, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers.
That's fair.
Do they make a move for Chris Paul? Would another dominant ball handler help or hurt Ben Simmons?
Well, I actually think this would be a good move for the Sixers, but I'm not sure how good of a relationship Paul and Doc Rivers have after the end of their tenure together in LA. I actually think this would be a great big three as Paul can actually shoot the ball and has the best IQ in NBA history. Simmons at the 4 actually worked well for this team once they went to that lineup in the bubble, and Simmons can still facilitate down low, and I'm sure he will still have plays drawn up for him where he is the main facilitator if him and Paul are on the same team. Do it, Elton Brand. Give them Horford too while you're at it.
No, I think they'd actually give up Embiid and keep Horford.
What? Hunter, you're just trying to get under my skin today. That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get under my skin.
Oh my God. I think Chris Paul of the Sixers makes a ton of sense.
I agree.
That one I agree with. Because I think as great of a ball handler and decision maker as Ben Simmons is, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have 2 guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though they didn't win at all, James Harden and Chris Paul worked pretty well together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, I think they beat the.
One win away from the finals.
I think they beat the Warriors. I do. I honestly think that happens. And even then, Chris Paul worked really well with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Ben Simmons is better than he is right now. So I think that this move makes a ton of sense. And also, too, like I've been saying, I think the biggest problem with the Sixers with losing Jimmy Butler is they lost that closer.
Absolutely.
Chris Paul is a closer.
Absolutely.
And they get that guy back. And I think that, again, Simmons and Embiid, you don't trade them, but I'm fine with giving up anybody else on that team.
Absolutely.
I don't really have an issue with trading anyone else.
I would too, except for Matisse Thybulle. I love him. But
Yeah,
I would.
He may have to be in that move, though.
I know he would.
Yeah.
But I would enjoy that move. And also just having guys at the end of the game who can shoot free throws that aren't Joel Embiid. You don't want your 7-2 center to be the guy you're trusting at the free throw line.
Or Ben Simmons.
Obviously. Hunter. I thought that was obvious.
or Al Horford.
I'm going to need to take a time.
All right. Well, on that note, let's talk about some more positive things here. We're going to give our All-NBA bubble most improved team. We saw some players really step up in the bubble despite the long hiatus that they had from the basketball court. Matt, I'll let you go first. Who made your most improved team?
I think this one is the most obvious one. TJ Warren.
Yeah.
After lighting up the Sixers for 53 points in that opening game of the bubble, he then went on to take the league by storm, and he continued his torrid pace by adding 3 more games with 32 or more points. His performance was good enough to be named to the first team All-NBA bubble team, and his production truly came out of left field.
Yeah, that he was number 1 on my list too, because I was like,
As he should be.
What is TJ Warren doing? What bubble MVP out here? Yeah, TJ Warren was phenomenal, and maybe his production, if it can sustain, just tells the Pacers, hey, I guess we'll trade Victor Oladipo.
Yeah, I think it might be too early for him to be the focal point of that team, to be the star. I mean, it was only 8 games that he
He
went
wasn't
off.
great in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Butler shut him up again.
Exactly. Yeah, so I don't think he's the star, but I think he's a great second or third option.
Yeah, he could be. I mean, he was a bucket getter at NC State. He actually scored a lot of points. It's just crazy that I think they literally got him for like a second-round pick from Phoenix.
Yeah, and you also have to question, too.
What?
No, I think the second round pick from Phoenix.
Yeah, that's what I'm
very,
saying.
Very good trade, but I think you also have to question, is he even the best TJ on his team? Because TJ McConnell was there.
God.
And TJ McConnell's a very gritty player.
Oh.
He plays in the backcourt. He's always picking him up full court, always stealing the ball. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
He's a glue guy.
He's a glue guy.
He's a glue guy.
He's great as
Great
well.
character.
Great guy being the 10th man on your team. But
Hey, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would take him any day. Oh God, I miss him.
he plays hard. I'll give him that. But another guy I have on my list, and this is a pretty obvious one, we're going to go with Jamal Murray because he was obviously entering a bubble, a very good player. But he became, I'd say, arguably a great player, and I expect him to hopefully build off this and help Denver, get back to the Western Conference Finals and maybe even go further.
Yeah, I think, he is definitely positioned himself into being that 1B guy for Denver instead of, Jokic being the clear 1 and him being the clear 2. They're both pretty equal right now in terms of who the number 1 guy is on that team in terms of points, assists, doing everything they can to help their team win. And he's actually a decent defender, too.
Yeah, he actually got a lot better on that side of the ball, too. His shot selection got a lot better, too. Becoming a better facilitator, better playmaker. He's gotten a lot better. Gotta give him credit. And like you said, Matt, no egos on that team either. Jokic and Murray are completely fine sharing the spotlight together, and their games complement each other really nicely. But who else is on your list?
I've got Michael Porter Jr.
Oh my God, so do I. We're 3 for 3.
Let's go.
Actually, did you have Murray or no?
I did not.
Okay.
I let you have that one.
Yeah.
We've talked about this guy a lot on this podcast in recent weeks, even proclaiming ourselves as Michael Porter Jr. podcast.
Yep.
In the bubble, he had 4 games of 23 or more points, including a 37-point explosion in their win against OKC in the seeding games. He was named to the second team All-Bubble, and he continued to improve through the playoffs. Though he was inconsistent with his scoring and playing time, he did improve a lot.
He did, and you gotta remember, this is his first year. Obviously he sat out because of the injury, so he kind of did like what Ben Simmons, like a redshirt year, and was really good. So, I think Michael Porter, if he can become the third guy on that team and become like a consistent third guy, because he has the talent to do it, Nuggets are going to be a really dangerous team.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah, most definitely. So that was my third guy on my list. So I'll let you read off your third guy.
I've got Tyler Hero.
Okay. I didn't have Hero on mine, but that's a good pick.
He really exploded onto the scene during the playoffs, but his seeding games weren't too shabby either, as he averaged 16 points per game, including a 30-point outburst, also against OKC. Then, of course, during the playoffs, there was only one instance out of his 21 games in the playoffs where he didn't score in double figures, and, of course, he had that huge 37-point performance in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that he was also really good in the bubble games, too, because he took that whole step. This his emergence in the playoffs, I guess, was coming. You know what I mean? And he missed a lot of time in the regular season, but he was able to get healthy for the bubble and make a big impact on the Heat.
Yeah, I think the seeding games, they weren't a lie to anybody. You could, if you watched those seeding games, you weren't surprised by how Tyler Hero played in the bubble. Maybe not to the 37-point performance that maybe that was out of the realm of possibility. But I think in terms of, scoring at double figures every game, that was kind of expected after what he did in the bubble.
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up, Matt. That was a nice pick.
Thank you.
Number 4 on my list wasn't necessarily like a breakout guy by any means, but I'm referring to most improved because I believe he checked off a big box for me, and that's Devin Booker. I'm a big Devin Booker fan. I love his game. I think he gets overlooked a lot. I'm glad he finally made an All-Star appearance this year. But Devin Booker going 8-0 in the bubble and hitting game winners, making plays both for himself and others. I think Devin Booker proved that he's got what it takes to help carry a team. And for the Suns, for their best interest, if he's able to be that guy again, maybe they can contend for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I can certainly see them contending for a playoff spot this year, especially going off of what they had to build off of. And it seems like their coach is, I think it's Monty Williams,
Yep.
right? Monty Williams has got them in a great place right now. It's a great build of confidence for them to build off of after these seeding games. And, especially with DeAndre Ayton, hopefully taking that next step. If they can make a splash in free agency like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
I think this team could really take the next step.
I think so too. They're a really exciting team to watch, and they had a couple other guys like Javon Carter and Cameron Payne, two guys that have really not done a whole lot in their careers. Even the Bulls calling Cam Payne a bust, the practice after they traded for him.
Right.
But yeah, they look like a team on the rise, and I think the Suns fans finally have something to be excited about. But Matt, who
All
else
six
is
of
on?
them.
What'd you say?
I said all 6 of them.
All 6 of them. But who else is on your list?
I've got Karis LeVert. He averaged 25 points per game in the seeding games, good enough for second team all bubble, including 2 30-point games and a 37-point masterpiece against Portland on the last night of the seeding games, in which he went toe-to-toe with Damian Lillard. He then went on to average 20 points per game in their 4 postseason games and was pretty much the only player that was worth anything on that bubble Brooklyn Nets team.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that last point. Because yeah, a lot of their guys opted out or just hurt, and Karis LeVert, we're looking at him like, okay, let's see what you got. I'm a big Karis LeVert guy even before the bubble. I think he's extremely talented, just can't always stay healthy. But he was really good, like you said, Matt. He elevated his game and definitely produced.
It'll be interesting to see whether they shop him to try to get a third star or if they keep him.
Yeah, that's a very good point because I do like me some Karis LeVert a lot. But last on my list is a guy who I would say broke out, and I think he can be a really good piece for Portland, and that's going to be Gary Trent Jr.
Okay. Definitely.
He was shooting like I forgot what the numbers were, but his 3-point percentage was just absolutely phenomenal, and he's a great 3-point shooter, so that's not shocking. But me watching Gary Trent since like high school because he went to Duke, I saw him through Duke. Obviously, I'm a Duke fan. I did not expect him to be the best player in that class. I did not. For Duke, ahead of guys like Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter. He's been the best guy, and he fits today's NBA a lot. He also plays really well off of McCollum and Damian Lillard, which is good because you can play those 3 guards together.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot better on defense. He got like stronger on that end of the floor. He can score in a lot of different ways now, not just a catch and shoot guy. We didn't see him play great in the playoffs, but I don't really blame him because they were pretty much like you're guarding LeBron the whole game.
Yeah.
And that's not easy for anybody. So I don't blame him there, but he's a really good player, and I think he could be a 6th Man of the Year candidate next year.
Yeah, I certainly could see him doing that, especially if he keeps up the way he was shooting 3-pointers during the bubble there. He had one of the best 3-point percentages in the bubble.
Yeah, I think he was leading them at one point too.
Nice, good for him. Also, you brought up a name I haven't heard in a while, Wendell Carter. Where is he at?
He's on the Bulls.
Oh, poor guy.
Poor guy.
That's why I haven't heard about him.
Yeah,
Yikes.
a team that no one wants to talk about.
Hey,
but
man.
last but not least, Matt, who rounds out your list? Oh,
Did
no.
you really think I was going to go this whole list without mentioning a Sixer?
Oh, no.
Shake Milton,
Oh, my
starting point guard. Shake
Oh,
Milton
no.
exploded onto the scene for
Oh,
Philly
no.
just before the COVID debacle and earned a starting role going into the bubble when he who shall not be named was sent to the bench. He averaged 10.5 points per game while also facilitating the basketball well, and even hit a game winner against the Spurs. I know you forgot about that. In the playoffs, he was far from the problem for a Sixers team that embarrassed my soul and got swept by the Celtics, as he scored over 13 points in each game of that series. I see your head in your hands. I don't appreciate that. He really improved. In terms of improvement, he started in the G League, and now he's here, so I'd call that really a good improvement.
I like Shake Milton. I think
Yeah,
he's a good player.
As you should.
39
39 points against Clippers.
Yeah, that was before the bubble, though.
39 points against Clippers. That's a lot of points, Hunter.
Yeah, I think Jamal Murray had like 40-something, though.
Yeah,
so.
we almost won that game, too.
Yeah.
So,
Almost.
yeah,
Think about it. Shake Milton has a game of his life. You couldn't even win that.
Well, okay, we didn't have Embiid or Simmons at that time, so almost winning that game was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, and maybe a blunder on
And
the Sixers.
as you know, the Sixers
blunder on the Clippers.
the Sixers don't play well on the road at all. So
That's true.
that was a huge thing.
Yeah,
That was a great moral victory.
Yeah, they that's a good point. Yeah, okay, I'll let you have your Shake Milton fun, I guess.
Sweet.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake, baby.
Yeah, but that's going to wrap up our Ball Don't Lie podcast. A little bit over an hour. So, like I said, we are not shying away from the content here. There's still plenty to talk about in the NBA, and we're going to continue bumping out content for you guys here on Penn State Sports Night. Appreciate all the support. Matt, any last words?
Chris Paul to the Knicks, really?
Oh my
That's your
God.
solution?
Yeah, that's my solution because the Knicks, there's no other moves to be had for them. Would you rather trade for Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook?
Ew,
Yeah,
neither.
exactly. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up here. Thanks for tuning in, and catch us next week.
Adios.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.